Welcome, neighbors. We're now going to get started with tonight's program. The Upper West Side Coalition brings together block and neighborhood associations, along with so many of the leading nonprofits working so hard to support our community, of our treasured community. If you want to start a block association, please be in touch. And if you want to strengthen or revive a block association, we're here to assist. And if you just want to learn a little more about what's happening on the Upper West Side, check out our website and sign up for a monthly newsletter, upperwestsidecoalition.org. I'm Steve Anderson from West 81st Street, and I serve as the president of the Upper West Side Coalition. Thanks so much for the technical assistance. I'm sorry we got on a few minutes late. Thanks so much for the technical support provided by Mark Diller and Yosuke Nava, who are helping us out. This evening is a local candidate forum, allowing those seeking our support to introduce themselves or introduce themselves more. They are all candidates in the June 24th Democratic primary. The current Manhattan Borough President, Mark Levine, is now a candidate for New York City Controller. Seeking the Democratic nomination to be our next borough president in Manhattan are two candidates, New York State Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel and New York City Council member Keith Powers, and we welcome them both. After we hear from them and take questions, we'll be joined by the 7th District NYC Council member Sean Abreu, seeking re-election, and two candidates challenging him, Adafe Akporo and Tiffany Khan. There was a recent scientific study indicating that the Upper West Side was among the 10 friendliest communities in the U.S. There was no rankings, however, released regarding the feisty factor, but I remind all who are together this evening that we are neighbors here in support of our community, and let respect and appreciation guide our conduct, please. Let's begin with opening comments, maximum of 5 minutes, please, for our two borough president candidates. We'll then share some questions from those submitted, some placed into chat, and from coalition members who have joined us. Senator Hoylman, Siegel, would you please kick us off? And again here, let's stick to 5 minutes maximum, please. If you could unmute and join us.
Well, thank you, Steve, and the Upper West Side Coalition for putting this forum together and inviting me and my esteemed colleague, Councilmember Powers, to this evening's event. You know, just let me say the Upper West Side Coalition has been a real change for the better. And block associations are truly the foundation of so much of our local government that bubbles up to state and federal. So thank you for all your work. It's been a privilege for me to represent the Upper West Side in the state Senate, and it would be an honor to continue to represent the neighborhood and the rest of the borough as your next Manhattan Borough President. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and about what I've done as a state senator, and then most importantly, what I hope to do as the next borough president. I live in the village with my family, my 7 and 14-year-old daughters. I'm a public school parent. My daughter goes to Hunter Elementary, and my other daughter is on the Upper West Side at Dwight. I moved to Manhattan over 30 years ago, served a decade on Community Board 2, and was the chair for 3 years. And it's really where I got my start on a block association on 10th Street, a community board, and then here in the state Senate, where I've served since 2013. When I first ran for state Senate, I was told that an individual state senator in Albany could make a difference on broader policy. I hope I've proven them wrong. I've passed 368 bills in the state Senate on issues ranging from strengthening tenant protections, curbing dangerous bicycles, including e-bikes, combating scaffolding, improving mental health services, increasing affordability for New Yorkers, promoting public safety, cracking down on anti-Semitism, and improving public education. Now I'm proud to be running as your next borough president. When it comes down to it, I really want to be the quality of life candidate and the quality of life borough president. We are facing public safety, affordability, and quality of life challenges like we haven't seen in decades. And I hear it from you, Upper West Siders, where I have represented from Christopher Street, the home of the historic Stonewall Inn, all the way up to West 103rd, or as I like to say, from the gay bars to Zabars. And as a parent raising school-age kids in Manhattan, I see these problems every day as I take my kids to school, and I'm deeply invested in the future of your borough. Three big ideas that I want to advance. One, I want to utilize our community boards, which are the town halls of our neighborhoods, where they serve as a crucial entity for policy development and advocacy. One of the first hires I want to make is a real estate financial analyst, so that our boards can fully understand and grasp what it means to build affordable in our borough, what it means when a developer says they have to put a certain number of market units in a building in order to move forward. The community board should have the ability to analyze those suppositions by developers. Secondly, I want to create a dashboard. We're calling it QualStat on my campaign, but it would be the borough president's version of CompuStat. The dashboard would collect real-time data of complaints, where they were made and how many and how often, and in which part of the borough. We need to assess city services across Manhattan, so we know whether, you know, the services in the Bowery are equal to the services in Inwood or otherwise. That is something the borough president should be focusing on. Third, I want to create a parent resource advocacy center in the borough president's office. As a public school parent, I know the challenges of getting your kid into middle or high school. It's something we all confront. And frankly, if you are from an underserved community, or you may not even know how to apply for these very complicated applications, the borough president should be there to help, and my Parent Resource Advocacy Center would be there to assist you. In addition, I want to have dyslexia screening as part of the borough president's ambit for all kindergartners in Manhattan who wish to be screened. You know, dyslexia screening costs less than 50 cents a pupil and takes like less than 10 minutes for that initial screening. I'm proud to have passed legislation in Albany that requires private health insurance to cover the costs of neuropsychological exams, which range between $5,000 and $20,000. Dyslexia is a personal policy project of mine because my 14-year-old is dyslexic, and we didn't find out until she was in 4th grade, which is about 4 grades too late. And then the final thing I want to create is a Manhattan Tenants Union. There are countless Manhattan residents in buildings that should be organized or could be organized. They now fall potentially under the good cause eviction protections that were passed in Albany, and market rate tenants should get the benefit of that knowledge. Whether they are protected, they should know that their rents can only go up a certain percentage lease after lease. Finally, I wanted to say, and I've got the pink card, which I want to say that I've got the endorsements of Congressman Jerry Nadler and Dan Goldman, 3 former Manhattan Borough presidents, Gail Brewer, Ruth Messinger, and C. Virginia Fields, along with State Senators Clear, Assemblymember Micah Lasher, Linda Rosenthal, the One Harlem Coalition, which is made up of about a dozen Harlem elected officials led by Keith Wright and Senator Cordell Clear, the Broadway Dems, the 3 Parks Dems, the West Side Dems, VID, DID, Grand Street Dems, and more. So I've spent the last decade fighting in the Senate for a Manhattan that is livable, affordable, and safe. And I pledge as borough president, I'm going to bring that same energy and creativity to tackle the toughest challenges for families, seniors, small businesses, and the most vulnerable members of our community. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Brett. I just want to mention to our tech team that some people who originally signed on to YouTube are having trouble getting the feed. Others who have just signed on later are on. So if the tech team can take a look at that and see what needs to be done, that would be useful to get the others who are waiting to come on. Councilmember Powers, please join us.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone. And thank you so much for putting this forum together today. This resembles something that I do in my office every month, which is we gather all the block associations and the neighborhood associations together, and we actually tackle the issues as a community all together. We bring in commissioners, we bring in leaders from the city to be able to talk about the big ticket issues. And the reason is because one block association is dealing with an issue, you better believe the other one is too. And we've been able to pool our resources together. And it's a new sort of approach I've taken, the sort of community town hall model where we can meet as our local leaders once a month with the folks that are doing important work in this district. I will be doing that as a borough president as well, and I hope you guys will be part of that with me. I'll tell my background, but I want to just start with a point, which I'm running for borough president because I think we're a city and a borough at a crossroads. And Manhattan is the center of the conversation around where we go forward and how our future looks here in the city. And this year, across the board on the ballot, we are making an important decision about the long-term future of this city and the long-term solutions that our city is facing. And the central question is whether we're going to continue to go through the status quo and put band-aids on many of the solutions that our city is facing, whether it's public safety or mental health, or we're going to go in a new direction and confront those issues head on. And I want you to know, I'm thinking about the issues that the city is facing. I'm thinking big about ways that we can solve them. And I have a plan and both the political courage and will to tackle all of them. And if you want big ideas and you want common sense, and I really believe I am your candidate for borough president, because no matter what community you live in right now, I think you can feel the pain of public safety. You can see the need to continue to tackle mental health and to get to work on all these issues that impact our neighborhoods. Many of you know, I've been championing the scaffolding reform in the city council. I've done new legislation to go after noise pollution, to tackle e-bike fires, and to tackle all the sort of issues that come through my office every single day, because the best legislation is the one that comes from the community and our constituents. And those are the issues that New Yorkers want to hear about right now. Just to take a step back, I'm a lifelong Manhattan resident, a lifer here in Manhattan, grew up, born and raised, and I've been fortunate to represent the community that I live in and that I lived in my whole life in the city council. And when I got to the city council, I was able to take my experience both in government and as a New Yorker and to get to work. I was able to advocate for tenants to help lower their rents in places like Waterside Plaza and Stuyvesant Town, work that was praised by the New York Times. I fought to pass a number of pieces of legislation that prevent housing discrimination and prevent overcharges for renters. I've worked and I've been a leader in the King's Council to build more housing in the city and build more affordable housing, because my central premise is if you can't afford to live here, then everything else doesn't really matter. I was recognized after 2 years in the city council as one of the top lawmakers by city and state because of my legislative record and my ability to get things done. But I want to talk a little bit more about what I've been doing recently. When we talk about public safety, I've been working at City Hall with Councilmember Breu to talk about tracking down illegal guns, to strengthen and expedite gun violence investigations, to make sure all our communities feel safe. On improving quality of life, I've spearheaded legislation to combat e-bike fires, curb noise pollution, and get decades-old scaffolding off our streets, and to tackle helicopter noise, which many of us in Manhattan hear often. I worked to pass legislation to protect small businesses from excessive fines, to bring innovative projects to Manhattan that will build the pipeline of new jobs and economic development for our borough, to protect our arts and cultural institutions, which are really so much of the reason we want to live here in Manhattan, is to have great places to go and have world-class arts institutions. I've worked at what I call like a meet people where they're at approach to homelessness by funding programs with Councilmember Botcher in places like Times Square and Midtown that actually go out on the streets and help people struggling with homelessness to get them into housing. And I'm really proud of my environmental record. I passed zero waste legislation on composting and to reduce our carbon footprint. I've championed a nation's first, a nation's leading zero emissions vehicle bill for the New York City fleet that's been serving as a model for the rest of the country here. And I have a 100% rating for the New York League of Conservation Voters for the work that I've been doing here as a council member. But looking ahead and looking if I am so lucky to be your borough president, number one is going to be attacking affordability. I know firsthand growing up in a middle-class community that affordability is on top of minds of so many New Yorkers right now. And when you certainly look ahead for people that are trying to build a family here, it's the number one issue they have. I see the cards coming. So I was tackling affordability, taking on the public safety and mental health crisis facing the city, solving the quality of life issues that our city is facing, and we can use the borough president's office to do that. And I look forward to talking about more ideas that I have for the borough and for our neighborhood. So thank you for letting me the chance to be with you guys tonight.
Thanks so much. And we're going to go to some questions both from Upper West Side Coalition members who are in the room with you. People are sending questions in by email and now on the YouTube link as well. First question we want to go to comes from Dale Brown, the leader of the West 79th Street Block Association and vice president of our coalition. Dale, please ask.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time and explaining your positions, because it's really very important to us. I think Steve said earlier that we are the 10th friendliest city in the country. And I'm a little concerned about that because I want to get your opinions in regards to the shelters that we have. What is your position and thinking about the number of shelters that have opened? And we hear that more are anticipated in the Upper West Side, and there is a tremendous amount of concern about this. Senator, would you like to go first, and then City Council member?
Sure. Thank you, Dale, and thanks for all your work. When it comes to shelters, we have to be a caring society. That's first and foremost. I think one of the fundamental roles of government, particularly when you have a well-resourced, borough like ours, is to look after the most vulnerable. I take that to heart. I think that's my mission as an elected official. I will say this, though. Shelters should be done in consultation with the community. And I think that we passed a law in Albany that requires the community boards to be notified when a shelter is slated for approval in a certain community board district. I think that's key to building support for even more shelters, is for the community to understand their importance, for communities to understand who is going to be in the shelter, and for the communities to understand, who's going to benefit. That exchange of ideas needs to happen out of respect for local community boards, for block associations, and other stakeholders. You know what I really don't like, Dale, is the top-down approach that we often see in government these days. Communities saying, you take this, it's fair share, it's important. I might agree with all of that, but why don't you start the conversation at the grassroots community level? Why don't you bring in the community board and have confidence that our local leaders can make the right decision on behalf of people who certainly need to have the assistance and care of our municipal government. And I'll also say that, wraparound services are so crucial to our shelter system. So many folks who are in shelters don't have the support they need to get out of the shelter system. And fundamentally, City Hall needs to think of shelters as a way station for permanent, affordable housing. That's what we need. And that's why I've supported Councilmember Brewer and Abreu in their efforts to get more permanent, affordable housing in the neighborhood. That's the goal that we should have in mind to ensure that homeless folks, get a fair shake at life in this amazing borough.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Powers.
Yes, thank you for the question. Look, I agree. We do need to take a compassionate approach when we're talking about homelessness and make sure that all communities are helping out when it comes to our neighbors and many families that desperately need a place to go and a place to be safe. In the past, the New York Times actually praised my efforts for standing up for our homeless neighbors to make sure that we are treating them like our neighbors and not treating them like enemies. And look, first of all, when I say every community has to carry their burden, there are communities outside of Manhattan that are not doing enough and not doing a fair share to help out in this crisis. So number one is we do have to make sure that when I say all communities, I certainly mean parts of my district, but I'm also think that other districts need to be doing the same and be compassionate in the same way that us in Manhattan are. Number two is we continue to have a process for getting out of the shelter system that is complicated and convoluted. I'm looking at legislation that can make it a lot simpler to get out of the shelter system, to untangle the process for finding a home, and to make sure that a family that goes in has a quick way out with a good voucher that can get them housing. I'm really proud of the work that we've done. Councilmember Diana Ella, who's been endorsed in my race, has been a leader in the council on making sure that we increase the values of those vouchers and get rid of the bureaucracy so that we can lower the headcount inside of our shelter system, which really means that we're getting people the housing that they need. And when we talk about housing, that is always the approach we all want to take first. We want to make sure there is good housing for people to live in, and we cannot have leaders that are blocking affordable housing that can be built in this borough or elsewhere, because that is housing for families that are in need. And based on legislation that we passed in the city council, all that those new housing developments include housing for families that have recently experienced homelessness. So when we talk about blocking housing, we're really blocking people that can exit the shelter system and build a new life and build a new future. So we have to be compassionate, but we also have to be ambitious in our ability to build housing and build affordable housing in the borough, and be good at saying yes to that so that we can house people and find a good place for them to live.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So let's try to be as brief as you feel you can, 2 minutes or so,
Right.
so we can get to a lot of the issues. You mentioned housing, and there's a lot of issues about housing. One particular issue raised by one of our neighbors, Ilan Rabinovich, he's wondering about, there was supposed to be reform of property tax reform. It was stated that it was inequitable, it was flawed, it was a bad system, and that it's just another element screwing up the entire sort of way in which housing can become available and become more affordable. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Keith, maybe you want to kick it off this time?
Sure. I support it. We have in the city council been asking Albany to act on property tax reform. Many New Yorkers have, and we're still waiting. So that would help many folks make a more equitable system here in the city and the borough. I believe the city council's put out property tax reform ideas of past, and have very little control over the final outcome of that. I certainly locally want to make sure that we have ways we can use things like SCREE, like increase the maximum value of, sort of the starting value of things like SCREE and DREE, which are rebates for people to pay the rent. That's a part of the conversation in Albany. But when it comes to property tax reform, we've been waiting over a decade or so to get reforms. And I think many of us, the city council, would like to see. We've done some rebates and other things to the city council to help offset the cost, but the structural reforms have to come through Albany, and we have been waiting for that to happen.
Senator?
Yes. Yeah, you talk about property tax reform. Sure, we can focus on homeowners. We can also think of business owners too. Madison Square Garden hasn't paid property taxes in over 40 years. The city is losing billions of dollars in property taxes simply because they don't want Albany to act to impose a fair property tax system. I supported legislation sponsored by one of my colleagues, and we put it in our Senate One House, and sadly it was rejected. Maybe that's the power of Madison Square Garden and its operation, but it's completely inequitable that we're subsidizing a stadium that has no chance of moving due to an original deal made under the Koch administration to prevent Madison Square Garden from moving their sports teams to New Jersey. Secondly, property tax reform is so overdue. A single family homeowner in Queens pays more of a percentage of their income than someone who lives in Manhattan in a pied-à-terre that's worth, $10 million. That's not fair. So we need to certainly focus on that. I think it's something that the borough president could advance with hearings, with cooperation, both from the city council, the next city administration, which I hope comes sooner rather than later, and with Albany. So it's a complicated but an equitable system that certainly needs to be addressed by both the city and the state.
Thank you. Let's go to Gail Duboff, who's president of the West 83rd Street Block Association, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, block associations in our city. And she's got a question that will kick it off with the councilman first.
Can you hear me?
You're good.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Councilman, the coalition has been working really hard to grow block associations on the Upper West Side. And I'm just wondering if you will commit to collaborating more with block associations and neighborhood groups, since we're playing a more vital role in the community.
I love this question. Absolutely, yes. A very loud yes. And what I've been doing in my district, just like this today, I said earlier, I do this every month. We bring in all the leaders from different block associations and neighborhood groups and tenants associations onto a Zoom. We bring in the NYPD commissioner, we bring in city planning commissioner, and we let all the leaders be able to have a conversation about what's happening I represent the East Side and Midtown West, so what's happening in their area. I'd like to do that with all of you if I'm the borough president, to make sure you can get direct line to the city commissioners and the borough commissioners that have so much power and agency over what happens in your community. We have funding. We fund right now many of the block associations in my own area and district. You can bet I'd continue to love to do that all around the borough to make sure you have the resources that you need to do advocacy work, or even capital funding to plant trees and do other neighborhood beautification. And I've been doing that for the last 8 years in my own district and community. And something that, I put an op-ed out a few weeks ago in AIM New York to talk about assessing and basically giving a report card about city agencies for the work or lack of work that they're doing in each neighborhood, each community. We want to grade them, and we want to hold the borough commissioners accountable and make sure that they have to answer for why isn't the trash getting picked up? Why is noise pollution so high? What are we doing about public safety issues in the district? Why is there scaffolding all over this neighborhood? And what can we do to get it down? I think instead of saying that just having 311 as the place where things go, I want an output of that. I want to actually have a data-driven approach to go and give people a direct assessment, the agencies a direct assessment, bring them in before you and hold them accountable. So number one is collaboration. Number two is funding and resources for those block associations. And three is accountability about the quality of life issues and neighborhood issues that you are calling all our offices about every day. Let's actually hold their feet to the fire.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question.
Senator?
Thank you. When I think about block associations, I have to mention someone. Her name is Vicki Poland, and she was president of the West 10th Street Block Association back in 1996. She gave me, truly, my first role in civic life. And humble as it was, I helped her hang bouquets up and down the street during the holiday season. But I became engaged in my local block association. And from then I went and joined my local community board. So block associations are the grassroots town halls for every neighborhood. And I want to strengthen them with grant money, with expertise and professional support from the borough president's office. But I also want to bring them into the borough president's office. I see a borough president's office that has a conclave, an annual conclave of block associations across the borough of Manhattan. I remember almost every stale donut and warm cup of coffee that I had in Gail Brewer's office when she was borough president. She did an excellent job of bringing folks into the room and seeking their opinions, whether they be block association members, community board members, or other stakeholders like preservationists. I want to replicate that model. And I also want to replicate Borough President Mark Levine's model of volunteerism. He has captured so many New Yorkers. And I had a town hall the other day on civil rights that some of you attended, and we heard the same thing. People are looking for something to do, especially during this very difficult climate, whether it's Washington, City Hall, or even Albany, dare I say. People want to be engaged. They want to be activated. Block associations is where it can happen. But Mark Levine has done a tremendous job in capturing a lot of that energy.
Thank you.
Both.
Another neighbor of ours, Mark Rosen, sent in a question asking about addressing crime and the prosecution of criminals, and asks, what's your position on changing the current bail laws that are having, many believe, such a significant impact? Senator, you want to start?
Sure. Well, we have to understand that the bail laws, which were passed in 2019 and signed then by Governor Andrew Cuomo, were meant to address a systemic inequity, unfairness, and absolute humanitarian crisis where individuals were sent to Rikers, as was Khalif Browder, without a trial. He spent over a year, close to 2 years, on Rikers without even seeing a judge because he was held without bail for apparently, at age 16, stealing a backpack. And of course, I think many know that he died at Rikers. I think that was the spark that lit a lot of our criminal justice reforms. We have looked at the bail laws for the last 3 sessions and made adjustments to them. And I think we should continue to make adjustments as the statistics warrant. I had a meeting with new police commissioner Jessica Tisch just last week, where we discussed the issue of discovery reform and how sometimes it's difficult for district attorneys to keep a case if they don't cross every T and dot every I. But I'll tell you that public safety has to be at the top of the next borough president's agenda. My personal story, I was with my 14-year-old at the West 4th subway station. I saw an individual menacing passengers on the staircase down to the D train. I have a relationship with the NYPD, took a picture of the individual. The following Tuesday, I was watching in New York 1, and I saw the perp walk of the individual who had murdered 3 people across the borough. It was that individual, 50 feet away from my daughter and me. If that doesn't tell you that subway safety, it should be a concern, I don't know what else does. We need more officers. We need to pay them more. We need to bring back community policing. We need to engage our community precinct councils, but all of that needs to be seen through the lens of fairness and justice, because we are a compassionate society and borough, but we need to be a fair and just one as well. But certainly, when it comes to issues like serial shoplifting, I'm proud to have taken the lead and passed legislation that now holds people who e-fence, who steal items from either luxury stores or the local Duane Reade and put them online, whether it's dozens of toilet paper rolls or high-end products from Sephora. Our law now allows the district attorney to charge e-fencing as a crime. And I was proud to appear with Governor Hochul and the district attorney when $2 million worth of products were displayed, stolen from Sephora and other retail establishments, but were prosecuted due to the law that I passed.
Councilman?
Thank you. Look, public safety top of mind for every single New Yorker right now. We all can get on the subway or on the streets and see issues that have been unattended to because either our laws are not making sense right now or we need to do better. And when it comes to deploying our resources here in the city, there are a few things that I would say that are essential, and I want to talk about the specific question. Number one is we talked about Commissioner Tisch. I think she's doing a fantastic job. I publicly called for her to be our police commissioner, no matter who the next mayor is. I think just in a few weeks' time, as Commissioner, she has shown a remarkable decline in a double-digit decline in crime here in the city. We have seen her be able to take on the hardest hit spots, including our borough, 125th Street, Times Square areas with some of the worst issues, and be able to bring serious decline to in crime there. We should keep her on as a commissioner. I think she's doing a great job. Number two is we need to fully staff our police precincts. Many of our precincts are down right now when it comes to having the amount of staff that they really need. And what does that mean? That means we don't have patrol cars on the streets. And something I really like is foot patrols. In my area, in my district, when there's a hard hit area, the thing that actually fixes it is deploying actual foot patrols on those blocks and cleaning up those areas that have a whole range of public safety and quality of life issues. If we increase our headcount and fully staff our precincts better, we will be able to do that work to go after the hardest hit areas and provide better sort of basic competence or better safety on the streets every day. And you better believe those quality of life issues matter. When I talk about scaffolding reform in the city, it is about helping our small businesses and property owners. It's also to help out those sort of dimly lit areas that become public safety hazards. But look, the central question is about the laws in Albany. And we know that those laws weren't working because they've amended them now 3 times and have admitted that the well-intentioned but not working laws that have really hurt and caused pain in our city right now. Right now, there's a question of when discovery reform. Will Albany actually act on the discovery reform laws that our most progressive and moderate district attorneys are calling for? I support discovery reform. I just support strengthening our mental health laws right now. That is the agenda for this year. And I support it. And I hope that they will take action to bring what Commissioner Tisch and our district attorneys are saying, bring that back to the city and make our streets safer.
Just a second, urging for brevity. Neil Burson, leader of the West 90s Neighborhood Association and a coalition vice president. You've got a question to begin with the council member?
Well, yes. It was more along the lines of the policing and the safety concerns that we just spoke about at some length. But I want to drill down specifically to the local precincts 20 and 24, 26, et cetera, up the Upper West Side, which has seen a substantial decrease in headcount, and the entire class of police officers have declined several thousand since their peak. We're losing these officers to retirement and to incentives offered by other jurisdictions for higher pay. This not only affects the crime statistics, but also how people perceive the quality of life in their neighborhoods. And in the recent spate of assignments of the new graduates of the academy, those new officers, at least in the 2-4 and probably elsewhere as well, have been reassigned from foot patrol to the subways. And that too has not helped in terms of dealing with crime on the street, particularly unprovoked assaults and assaults by mentally deranged people, etc. So I'd like to hear your specific proposal about staffing in the NYPD.
Sure.
Brevity, please.
Brevity, I'll be quick. Look, first of all, you got to pay these guys because it's one of the hardest jobs in the city. And when my friends got on the force years ago, they were making such little money. They did it because they wanted to be part of the public safety system here and they wanted to serve our city. You need to pay them. You need to retain them. I've been advocating at the city council to our colleagues upstate about more measures to be able to keep on the officers who've done 20 years, to give them more benefits to be able to stay on the force. I lost one of my best officers in the 19th precinct at year 20 just a few weeks ago. I was at his walkout, and it was a sad loss for our community because he was a great cop. And so we talk about that. We have to pay them. You have to drive down the cost of living in the city. You have to support them. They need to feel like the city leadership is supporting them. They have to feel like their actions actually work. But the work I talk about Commissioner Tisch doing, they have to feel like it's well run and that there is support of them, and that when they go out there and they make arrests, that there's actually a justice system that works. And when we talk about things like discovery reform, when they arrest somebody and they find out that it's a the 16th body camera footage, or it's a receipt from Uber Eats. That's a real story. That is a reason that they can't achieve justice here. It is demoralizing to them, and they do not want to do the job. And we are competing with Nassau and Suffolk County and Florida at this point to retain officers. So we have to pay well, we have to treat them well, we have to have a justice system that works so their jobs are not in vain. And ultimately, you're right, we do need to deploy more into our actual precincts, because right now they're getting taken to the subway system right now. We need to secure our subway system. We have to do that with laws. Increased ridership helps. We're seeing a decline based on increased ridership. If you do that, you can get those guys above ground again to be able to help out to do the work, whether it is the frequent shoplifting that we talk about, or it is the attending to the basic needs in our communities. And we're going to need the borough president to be able to drive that. And I'm very ready to do that.
Thank you.
Senator?
Yes, when it comes to subway safety, it's kind of hard to believe, but I know two people who in the last 3 months have been pushed to the tracks from the platform. I mean, how is it that I know two people? That is crazy to me. The first gentleman was taking a video of the historic trains as they left Herald Square, and some jackass pushed him, some crazy jackass pushed him to the tracks. He survived, but has 3 broken vertebrae and developed blood clots and nearly died from that. The second person was actually run over in Chelsea by a train and miraculously is alive today with us. But, I spoke to both of them, and the PTSD that they carry with them is incalculable. That said, I understand why the governor has moved officers to the platforms, but you know what? We got to hire more officers. We need to pay them more. We need to celebrate their successes, whether it's Cop of the Month or Cop of the Year or Cop of the Decade. They need to be recognized by elected officials for the danger that they put themselves in every single day. And I'll say that, we need officers who live in the city of New York. There used to be a law that required them to do so. They can't afford it anymore. So my idea is to provide them subsidized housing as part of their benefits package. We can do that by building more affordable housing, by leveraging the bonding authority of the city and state of New York. Look, we use bonding to build stadiums. We built the Buffalo Bills Stadium with bonding authority. For the record, I voted against it. But we should be using that bonding authority, billions of dollars that the state has access to along with the city, to provide officers homes for themselves and their families. Commissioner Tisch told me the other week that her officers are moving to Tennessee and Florida. They're working private security jobs. They're actually getting paid even less, but the stress and disrespect that they receive from some New Yorkers is just too much. And let me finish this thought with the notion that we need to stop fare evasion on the subways. The MTA loses over $700 million a year. I saw a woman with a Gucci pocketbook leaping over a turnstile the other day. I wanted to make a citizen's arrest, but she was well onto the train by that point. But it goes to show you that we can do more to make the police officers' life better by making our subway more secure, whether it's new gates or new ways to detect fare evasion. I support both of those.
Thank you. Melissa Elstein leads the West 80s Neighborhood Association, and I think she leads about half a dozen other activities throughout our community for the last several years, and is a dynamo, and has a question first going to Senator Hoyum and Siegel. Go ahead, Melissa. Good evening.
Okay, unmuted. And thank you so much, Steve. Great to be here with everyone. And yeah, for this particular question, I'm actually going to change my screensaver. Let's see, there we go. Okay, so you know what's coming next. Yes, and we are all the block associations here, we're all volunteers. I've been volunteering with the West 80s Neighborhood Association for 20 years, co-founding it. Now it's Stop the Chop, NYNJ, 5 years. We are all doing this on our free time. And so some of us are now feeling a little burnt out, and we want some solutions, especially when it comes to this. And I know you did mention it. if you are elected to the office of Manhattan Borough President, what can you do, which is different from what you both have already done with regard to this topic? And I thank Senator Hoylman for the bill that was passed and signed into law recently. And I know Councilmember Powers, you've introduced your own bill at the council. The borough president obviously has a different role and is able to appoint members of the Hudson River Park Trust. But we have been dealing with this issue of non-essential helicopters from the 3 New York City-owned heliports, which, just because some people do point the big finger at New Jersey all the time, I just want to let all the viewers know that we probably have about 50 to 60,000 non-essential helicopters flying over New York City, coming from the 3 New York City-based Manhattan, all 3 in Manhattan based, and those are the sightseeing from downtown Manhattan heliport, and then the commuters from the 3 other. So I'm not going to go into all the facts. Everyone can go on our website. So whoever, Steve, who should answer the question?
Senator first, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Melissa, and thanks for all of your work at Stop the Chop. Look, there's a lot of talk about getting rid of choppers, but I like to think that I have put my money where my mouth is by passing not 1, but 2 bills on ending chopper noise for Manhattan. The first bill, if you recall, we created a private right of action so that New Yorkers and the New York State Attorney General could actually bring actions against New Jersey tourist chopper operators. That took a lot to pass, and I got it through both houses, and the governor vetoed it. I'm extremely disappointed by that veto, but I didn't stop there. The next bite of the apple was moving the West Side helipad, which is responsible for a lot of chopper noise in Manhattan, off of the parkland at Hudson River, where it's now going to be moored in the Hudson River itself. So I think that's a very sensible solution and may actually result in the helipad going away in its entirety. So I'm very proud to have actually taken action. Let me say this. Chopper noise is one of the top, if not the top 311 complaint, according to recent statistics. Everyone is annoyed, whether it takes space in parkland or whether you're trying to have a performance at the Delacorte, or just having peace and sanctity of your community. It shouldn't be that you have to combat chopper noise. So I would do this. I would work with the city council member and introduce legislation to end those agreements with tourist choppers operators at city-owned helipads. There is no reason why the city of New York should have those franchise agreements. And I would make it a top priority, just as I think I've demonstrated in the 2 bills that I've passed here in Albany.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. And thanks always for your great advocacy and work and making a big difference on behalf of some of my constituents near the 34th Street heliport and all around the borough. And your efforts for Stop the Chop have been instrumental to take those constituent complaints we get, whether you're in Whitestone, College Point, or you're in Manhattan, to really organize around them. Look, help is coming and it's on the way. We have legislation, I introduced, legislation to make sure that the city phases out these really loud and noisy choppers and supports them, supports transition, and make sure that the loudest helicopters can't be operating in our city anymore. And we are working to get that bill passed because it is something we hear from my on the other side of Central Park. I hear from folks all the time. I hear my colleagues in Queens and downtown and Williamsburg who also have similar concerns. So in addition to the bill that Councilmember Ressler has around helicopters, there's another number of others as well. And I think the council is really working overtime now to make sure we can get something so that as new models come on board that are much, much quieter, that we have an ability to get rid of the loud and noisy and clunky helicopters. And I think that's a really good and smart approach. And then as a borough president, I can work on looking at our heliports to see how much we can do more, control for how much traffic is coming in with them, looking at the tourism helicopters, and maybe even organizing our federal elected officials to continue to tackle the issue of the Jersey helicopters and find hopefully some path with our Jersey counterparts to end and get rid of them. So that's a tall task, but I'm ready to do it. And I think in the meantime, as a council member, I want to work to make sure we can pass legislation that will provide a quieter experience for every single person in Manhattan to Queens to Brooklyn and beyond. So thank you so much for your support and efforts on that.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Melissa.
Absolutely. As with all such forums and events, we are over time. That's how it always plays out. We understand that. We're going to move shortly to the council race in the northern part of the Upper West Side, moving north. But first, an opportunity for the two of you to share a final word. And I would ask you to be brief, a minute or so, just a lasting message, what we used to call the leave behind message that you'd like to share with your future constituents or current constituents. Senator?
Well, thank you very much, Steve, and everyone on the Zoom. What an honor to represent this amazing part of the borough. For me, this has been a journey in public service, but it's also been a journey in community engagement, which is why I find myself, running for Manhattan Borough President, because fundamentally, that's what the office is about. It's about bringing people together, identifying problems, and coming up with creative solutions. I think I've demonstrated that. I hope I've demonstrated that in my career in public service, taking on the tough issues, supporting everything ranging from congestion pricing to making certain that tenants aren't evicted from their homes during COVID by sponsoring the Tenant Safe Harbor Act, to fighting for the rights of adults who are abused as children by passing the Watershed Children Victims Act, and most recently by filing an attorney complaint against Emil Bove for the scurrilous actions he took in the apparent quid pro quo between City Hall and the Trump administration. I have, in my 12 years in office, worked closely with community boards and block associations to find these creative solutions. And I'm truly looking forward to learning more from not just the West Side, but every part of Manhattan on how we can make certain that we build more affordable housing, we protect tenants who are in their homes, we make our city safer, whether it's on the subways or on your block. We fight e-bikes, as I have done here in Albany, and make certain that the quality of life is available for all New Yorkers, no matter their background or income, and that the next generation, my daughters, have an opportunity to afford to live in this amazing borough and raise their families.
Thank you. Councilman?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for giving us the opportunity today. And look, as a lifelong New Yorker, I'll tell you, this is really, for me, an all hands on deck moment. And we have to roll up our sleeves, get to work to make sure we can be bold and innovative when it comes to taking on what the challenges are in this city right now. We need to build that type of housing that will help us get through the housing crisis and build a type of new housing that will make sure that we can really afford to all continue to live here. We need to strengthen the laws that we talk about to make sure that we have safe neighborhoods and safe communities so that we can afford to live here, but we really want to live here because there continue to be great neighborhoods. We have to be innovative. We've taken on a lot of innovative strategies over the last few years, whether it's with Councilmember Abreu, I see our sanitation chair taking on the trash on our streets, taking on the scaffolding laws, looking at innovative ways to take on the noisy helicopters. Those issues that come before us, I've been a champion for finding innovative ways to kind of tackle these neighborhood issues. We didn't talk about small businesses. As a small business son of a small business owner, using my office as borough president's office to get rid of the massive bureaucracy that our small businesses face every day, and to give them one place they can go to open and operate a business and to get those issues sorted out. When we talk about the safety on our streets when we're walking around, looking at ways that we can license the app companies and make sure they're holding their delivery workers and drivers accountable, because I know many of us are concerned as we walk around. We want to have safe streets if we bike. We want to have safe streets where we walk. We have a lot of big ideas for this borough, so I hope you'll follow along our campaign along the way. And would love to talk to any of you offline as well about ways that we can work together in the coming months and the coming years, because this borough we all love, and no matter where side of it you on or what neighborhood you're in, we're all facing that crisis of making sure that our neighborhoods are safe, clean, and affordable. And I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thanks to the two of you. I think we're fortunate to have two candidates who are willing to go into the octagon of what's going on here in the battles that we face here in Manhattan and New York, and glad to have you two in the race. We wish you both the best of luck, and we'll be watching, and we'll be looking forward to talking with you again. So we will say goodnight to you. Of course, feel free to stay on, although you probably have 3 or 4 other meetings that you are headed to this evening, and keep up the stamina. I know
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much.
Quite the job. Thank you. We now welcome our city council candidates. Manhattan's 7th district spans north from the Upper West Side through Morningside Heights, West Harlem, Manhattan Valley, Manhattanville, Hamilton Heights, and Washington Heights. And the incumbent New York City Councilor, Sean Abreu, is seeking re-election to a 2nd term. And 2 candidates are challenging him in the primary election, Adafe Okporo and Tiffany Khan. And we welcome them joining us for this conversation. We are neighbors. We are people who care about our community, and we want to be polite and civic-minded and considerate. And we respect the fact that you are in these races, and this is quite the challenge to just be in this. So we welcome you. We're glad you're here, and we're going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves up to 5 minutes. You know, the pink card means it's about time to wrap up, or maybe you've spoken a little too long and you should wrap up very quickly. We try to be polite as well. So it's good to have the 3 of you here. Let's begin with the council member Abreu, please.
Good evening, Steve. Good evening, Neil. Thank you for having me tonight, and I will certainly keep it polite. Good evening. For those of you who I haven't met, I'm Council Member Sean Abreu, and I've had the honor of representing Council District 7, which runs from 92nd Street up to 165th Street. A little bit about me. I'm the son of Dominican immigrants, born and raised in Upper Manhattan. We lived in Washington Heights until I was around 10 years old. That's when my parents lost their jobs and we were evicted from our home. We moved to the Upper West Side on 87th and Broadway after my mom landed a job at Zabar's, where she's been for the last 24 years, and she's still there today. I struggled in school as a kid and was held back, but thanks to some great teachers and support from our community, I was able to get back on track. I went to Columbia for undergrad and eventually became a tenants' rights attorney, which is what I was doing before I was elected to office 3 years ago. I always talk a little bit about my background because it reminds me why I ran for the city council. I wanted to make big changes, to look out for our neighbors, my friends, and my family. Quickly, I'll highlight some of what I've been able to accomplish in the past 3 years. We focused heavily on getting people housed and bringing down rents. To get there, we expanded access to housing vouchers, which literally gets people out of shelters and off the streets into housing. I led the campaign to secure $20 million in free legal services for tenants in housing court, which makes it much harder for landlords to evict anyone unfairly. I've approved new housing and zoning changes across the city to make sure we're building new housing, which is what we have to do to bring down rents. And I helped negotiate as part of the most pro-housing city legislation in the fall with my colleagues, $5 billion in infrastructure investments to make sure that our neighborhoods can handle whatever new housing we build. That means more money for parks, for schools, and for public transit. Speaking of parks, I've secured $34 million in the last 3 years, specifically for parks in our district, including $17 million for Morningside Park and $10 million for Riverside Park. As chair of the sanitation committee, I also worked to bring back community composting after the mayor tried to cut it. I've been working with the Department of Sanitation to get trash bags off our sidewalks and into bins where they belong. Across the city, where we've containerized residential and business trash, we've reduced rat sightings by 34%. And in West Harlem, where we've began to pilot containerization for residential trash, we've reduced rat sightings by 60%. We passed Flacco's Law, which reduces our dependence on rat poisons. We brought back Sunday service to the libraries. We streamlined access to mental health resources through legislation. We passed a ban on discrimination on the basis of height and weight. We expanded pre-K for our youngest learners. That's a lot. I'm proud of what we've done, but I won't sugarcoat it. The next 4 years with President Trump are going to be tough. What I'm going to be focusing on is Trump-proofing our city. So we need to protect our economy. We need to build housing, get rents down, create good jobs for the people who build the housing. We need to make childcare cheaper for families. We need to keep our schools strong. That means supporting our teachers, getting them the training they need, keeping our buildings upgraded. We need to protect our rights, the right to an abortion, the right to free speech, you name it. So we need to fully fund Attorney General Tiz James and make sure that in the Albany budget next month, we're defending New Yorkers against federal overreach. We have big challenges ahead, but I know this community is up for the fight. Thank you for being here, for being engaged, and for being the kind of neighbors that make this city worth fighting for. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I apologize for the informality. Sometimes we use first names. It's meant as not disrespect, but it's just a casual gathering of some neighbors. Adafe Akporo, please join us and share with us a little bit of your perspective, please.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you to members of the Block Association. My name is Adafe Akporo. I'm running to represent Council District 7, my home district. I came to New York as an asylum seeker and experienced street homelessness before going on to run New York's first shelter for LGBTQ asylum seekers. I earned my master's from NYU. I worked with the Biden administration on the largest resettlement of refugees in our nation's history. I founded Refuge America, a nonprofit impacted by Trump's Day One executive order shutting down refugee admission. My lived experiences shape the policies I fight for: protecting retirees' healthcare, advocating for affordable housing, amplifying the voices of our most vulnerable communities. I'm a progressive Democrat, bold, pragmatic, and unafraid to take action. New York City must be safe, affordable, and a progressive beacon of hope for the nation and the world. There are common sense bills that would drastically increase the quality of life for New Yorkers that never receive a vote because the city leadership does not want them to get voted on. Developing a co-responder model to address crime is common sense. Providing meals to older adults every day of the year is common sense. Providing universal access to childcare is common sense. I am the change candidate in this race. My opponent endorsed Mayor Eric Adams in 2021, even though we already knew Adams was a former Republican and already surrounded by rumors of corruption. He voted for Adams' policies, including a $200 million cut to public education just recently in 2023. He left the Progressive Caucus and continues to take contribution from real estate developers, while the average rent in our city continues to go up. On the other hand, I refuse to take money from corporate parks and real estate developers. And I have the most individual donors of any candidate in this race, 655, because voters believe in our platform of change. We know rent is too high, childcare is unaffordable, and too many seniors are forced to fight for the benefits they earn. My opponents refuse to protect traditional Medicare benefits for our public service retirees. I, on the other hand, have been endorsed by New York City Organization of Public Service Retirees, who know I will fight to protect their health care and dignity. And I promise to sponsor Intro 1096 on day one in office to permanently protect our retirees from Trump Project 2025 plan of cutting Social Security benefits. This is how we fight on the local level, by creating laws that create safety net for our seniors who have worked hard to contribute to retire in New York City. We need safer streets, cleaner subway, and a retirement with dignity without having to fight against most Trump-style cuts. I support our block association that work to beautify and keep our streets clean. I will always be responsive to your calls for support, whether it's assisting a fire in your building, addressing school closure, or helping you navigate city agencies. When I came to New York City, I saw the crisis of homelessness among migrants, and I stepped up to fill that vacuum. These are experiences I am bringing. We need leaders who will fight for real change. That's why I'm running for City Council, to fight for the needs of our community. We have an upcoming event in 2 weeks on retirees in New York City and the benefit they deserve. Knox, naturally occurring retirement communities. Please go on our website, www.edafe2025, and sign up for the forum where we'll discuss how you can apply for SCREE, DRE, and other benefits that affect our seniors in New York City. We need candidates that will bring about change in New York City. I am that candidate. My proven record stands for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now welcome third candidate, Tiffany Kahn. Please join us.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for having me. I'd like to congratulate you all, first of all, for forming this group. I understand it's only a few years, and it's amazing. It's wonderful that we have this unity. We need more community unity across the city. And I'm originally from Brooklyn. Well, actually, my family is from the Caribbean, where I spent the first 5 years of my life. I am the first generation American of a family of West Indian immigrants. I grew up in Brooklyn in the 1980s and 90s at a time when crime rates were at an all-time high. But at the same time, we enjoyed a certain measure of quality of life that you do not see as much today. And by that, I'm referring to intergenerational families, from raising a child. I have a 5-year-old that I spent more time than I should have trying to get her enrolled initially in 3K when she was waitlisted, and then in pre-K. These were struggles that my mother, our parents' generation didn't have to experience, and also our elders. I was raised by my grandmother until the age of 5 in Barbados, and then here in Brooklyn later on. But it's much more difficult for grandparents to be involved in rearing grandchildren when they have to retire at a much older age than previous generations were able to do. And at the same time, they have senior centers that are disappearing or not getting sufficient funding. So these are all things that I think about and are partly what is driving me to run in this race. I went to public schools from kindergarten to 12th grade until I was able to attend NYU, where I did my bachelor's degree, studied abroad, moved abroad when I graduated, and spent over a decade overseas working. Returned to the United States in 2008, and I was shocked when I came back to New York City and saw how so many things were much different, including, for instance, there was a time when people like my mother's generation were able to immigrate here without even a high school degree. And the typical American dream: work hard, purchase a home, send children to school, and so on. And then you contrast that with my generation, a lot of folks that I went to school with, for instance, gone to school with, who have bachelor's, master's degrees and struggle to, you have people that are shacking up with roommates in apartments well into their 30s, even in their 40s, because they're paying more than 30% of their income on rent. These experiences, my own struggles with finding an apartment, are what led me to become a board member of the Met Council on Housing. I'm proud to say that I fought for the rent laws. We fought in 2019 to pass the strongest rent laws we've had ever in New York State. That's the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act. And we continue with these fights. As a board member of the Met Council, I'm also pushing internally to have NYCHA, that's the New York City Housing Authority, including, because as most of you of a certain generation might know, when the Met Council was born in the 60s, it was predominantly rent-regulated apartments that were under threat. Besides that, I am also a small business owner. I understand what it's like to deal with the competitive bidding process, bidding on city and state government contracts, which unfortunately there's a tremendous room for opportunity to create economic opportunities, but they're not met because of inertia, because of unawareness, because of a variety of reasons. But that is one of the goals that I have in the city council, is to ensure that our small businesses are receiving the resources that they need, and that when contracts are awarded, we prioritize local businesses. Okay, I'll stop there. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Many people submitted questions about housing and affordable housing. There were a variety of questions. So one of the people who sent in a note said, what do you consider affordable housing? What's affordable housing mean? And what efforts are you prepared to take to do something about lowering, for example, rental costs, the cost of rental housing in the district? And obviously it has more than district. Ms. Khan, maybe you could kick that off, and then we'll go to
Sure.
Mr. Akbaro.
That's a great question. So as you all know, MIH, that's mandatory inclusionary housing, was one of the requirements for new developments, 20% affordable in quotation marks. But the problem that, so I forgot to mention, I also served on Community Board 9 on the Housing, Land Use, and Zoning Committee, and among others. And this is a frequent problem that is always placed before us. When we have a rezoning, when we have a new project come up, it is predominantly studios. So this goes back to the quality of life issue. How do you raise, even as a couple surviving in a studio? And it's influenced by incomes in more affluent areas like Westchester. So you're seeing studios at $3,000 a month. We have an issue of warehousing, and it's not just private property. I can do a bicycle tour with anyone on this call throughout Harlem, throughout New York City, really, to show entire buildings that have been vacant for decades. And again, it's not just privately owned housing, it's also NYCHA. Currently, the New York City Housing Authority has 7,000 vacant apartments. So when I hear about this build, we need to ask the question, when the new housing comes up, especially after we've demolished rent-regulated apartments, not only is it not affordable to a lot of people in those communities, but it's not permanently affordable. When you live in a rent-stabilized apartment, you have all of the protections of the city and the state. You can automatically go to HPD. You can file an HP action in housing court, for instance, as I've done when my daughter had lead poisoning. I'll go back though. I'm sorry, I'm digressing a bit. But this is why I feel very strongly about not demolishing the stock of rent regulated apartments that we have, because the new projects aren't necessarily affordable forever. Okay. But I'd like to
go. Let's try to stick to 2 minutes for these questions so that we can get to many of the questions that are being posed. Adafe.
Affordable housing means that a household spend 30% or less on housing and utilities. The average cost for housing in New York City right now for a room is $3,700. So if you make $57,000 as an annual salary, which most people in District 7 does, they become rent burden. And the way we address affordable housing is by making sure low-income people and working-class family have accessibility to the current stock of affordable housing. So not just building luxury development with a small percentage of affordable units. It's expanding affordable housing that requires protecting rent-stabilized units, fully funding NYCHA. In my district, we have a backlog of repairs in NYCHA. We need to increase the spending on our budget and ensuring that new development prioritize working families. Recently, on 135th Street, a new development was approved as a luxury development all over West Harlem. It's not affordable. It's increasing the average median income, making it unattainable for the families that make low income in our district to be able to access the current stock of considered quote-unquote affordable housing.
Thank you. Councilman?
Well, I'm proud to announce that I was endorsed by the Working Families Party, which really speaks to my commitment to defending working families in District 7. As I mentioned before, I was formerly evicted from my rent-stabilized apartment, and the expansion of free legal services is helping keep hundreds, if not thousands of people into their affordable rent-stabilized apartments. Second, we cannot afford having rent-burdened household units. And that's why what's affordable to one family may not be affordable to another. And so I think that's why we need all types of housing. If you're one housing term sheet that I would support is the Ella term sheet, which is made available for extremely low income families. At the same time, we also know MIH is the floor. We can do way better than MIH. With the 485 that came from Albany, I hope that that's going to result in more affordable units. But even if you're a working class family with a good union paying job, making $100,000 a year, you need affordable housing for them too. And so we need affordable housing for the extremely low income, folks making 30 to 40,000, but also folks making 100,000. Making 100,000 as a combined family unit and you're raising 3 kids here in this city, it's not sustainable. In Manhattan, the average rent is 5,000. And so we need to do everything that we can to having housing for the extremely low income, but also work for housing as well.
Thank you. We have a question from Neil Burson, and it'll first go to Mr. Akporo, then Ms. Khan, and then the councilman. Neil, please.
So we all know that public safety is on the mind of all New Yorkers, and especially Upper West Siders, where so many senior citizens reside and retired people reside. One aspect of public safety is the threats posed by e-bikes and other micro-mobile devices to pedestrians who walking our streets. These bikes go on sidewalks, they go wrong way on one-way streets, they don't obey the traffic laws, and they cause and get into lots of collisions, not only with pedestrians, but also with other bikes and vehicles. What would you do to further protect the citizenry from these threats that so affect the quality of our lives?
Thank you very much, Neil.
Let's do that 2 minutes, please. Try to stick to 2 minutes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. I really appreciate that question. Last Saturday, I joined CB7 team and Open Plan with Brad Oitman-Siegel. They were looking at the assessment of how do we make our streets more accessible. I think that we need more protected bike lanes. New York City is backlogged in its plan to build more safer bike lanes. And I think that the pedestrians, the bikers, and the cars, everybody want to feel safe on our streets. There's a bill introduced by Councilwoman Gay Brewer, which will reduce the speed of e-bikes from city bikes. I do support that bill because I think that many people who are foreigners who come to New York City do not understand how the roads work and might just take a bike and drive it on any path. We need stronger laws. I think we also have to address the need of seeking compassionate measures as well as criminalization. So how do we create a system that doesn't just criminalize everyone? Because most people who are driving bikes for delivery, they are mostly immigrants who are trying to make a living. So we need to also address the need for the delivery companies who are putting unreasonable demand on them by drafting legislation that address issues at the root causes rather than just criminalizing. So I think such legislation like building more protected bike lane, ensuring that people that are driving city bikes have regulations that reduce the speed because some people do not understand how to ride a bike. Then also licensing with the delivery company so that if somebody is hit on the street, they have a cause of remediation. I will just tell one more story. My very good friend Elaine, she was hit by a bike on the Upper West Side, and we were trying to investigate, and we noticed that the guy was driving for V&T, a pizza company on 110th Street. But there was no way to sue V&T for this delivery person. But if that bike was licensed, we would have known who they were driving for. And that is like an easy way of remediating the issue. If I win city council, these are the kind of legislations I'm going to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Khan?
Yes, so I've been a lifelong cyclist. I still use this as a form of transportation to take my child to school. And it is a constant problem. With the Henry Hudson Parkway, for instance, we have e-bikes that are prohibited. There are signs posted everywhere that explicitly state that e-bikes and scooters and so on are not allowed on this bike lane, and yet those requirements are flouted by an interesting variety of people. Some of them are clearly people that are heading to work. They are delivery people, which I agree, we do need to have some compassion for people who are just struggling to meet certain quotas. But at the same time, there are other folks that are using that bike lane, for example, and they don't need to do so. So I think we could work with groups like City Bike, for example, to prevent them from having their bicycles run along that pathway, for example. And the same way that your shopping cart will cease to work once you exit the supermarket beyond a certain distance. We also need protected bike lanes around the city, but we have to be mindful of how we have to have a common sense approach that includes, for example, local community boards and other groups, and not just impose a bike lane in certain areas where it doesn't make sense. And again, I say this as someone who is a lifelong cyclist. So common sense reform and making sure that I personally would like to see this be a more cyclist friendly city, but we have to learn how to work with people, especially on sidewalks. There's really almost no reason for that.
Thank you, Councilman.
Well, I appreciate this question. I believe I answered it last year at one of the forums that you conducted, or maybe 2 years ago. First, I think we have to look at how algorithms within the apps are incentivizing, or rather encouraging, the type of behavior that we're seeing out on the streets. We know that because deliveristas are trying to get from point A to point B, when you have these algorithms that force you to do that, they're zigzagging and crisscrossing the streets, which we shouldn't be doing. I support reduced speed. I also support Bob Holden's bill that would require licensing and registration. It's unfortunate that despite having more than 30 sponsors, this bill has not moved forward. I don't believe that we need to criminalize, but I do believe that the licensing and registering is very important. I'm telling you, I've been flooded with hundreds of constituents on the West Side who tell me that they want to see Bob Holden's bill pass, and I'm listening to them. I also think that we need more enforcement. The truth is that these e-bikes, they're pretty much motorcycles, and we need to reduce their speed. But at the same time, our officers in many instances are twiddling their thumbs. And so we need to make sure that they're enforcing more to change the culture of the craziness of e-bikes running in opposite traffic, on sidewalks, and things of that nature. That being said, I have a package of bills for deliveristas that would make their lives better, like having tipping at checkout. Right now, deliveristas don't know don't have access to the information on how they get paid, how their pay gets calculated. They don't have access to their active time worked in real time. And so we have a package of bills for deliveristas to make their lives better. We recognize their contributions to New Yorkers. But at the same time, what I'm hearing from constituents is there's chaos out on the streets and we need to license and register. And that's something that I support.
Thank you. We've asked the same question that we asked 2 years ago because we have the problem only getting worse and don't have the way to celebrate the strategy that's been employed. So that's why we'll just keep asking those same questions, I guess, until there's a different situation. So a number of people have written in and asked us about sanitation issues on the Upper West Side. And some people feel that many of their streets are simply dirtier. And then there's the confusion about recycling and composting, and some buildings can't accommodate the different containers that they're supposed to put in, and it's created a lot of confusion. What's your take on how we're doing with all of this? And don't forget that the war on rats is still underway. And still a challenge. Councilman, why don't you kick us off for this time?
Yeah, I'll start with that. As I mentioned before, I'm the chair of the sanitation committee. Look, one of the main reasons why a lot of the sidewalks, not the sidewalks, rather the streets are dirty, is cars are not moving. And so what we need, last year I supported legislation that basically is called the home rule, which would give Albany legislature the authority to act. And I am supportive of cameras that basically attaching a camera to the sanitation truck so that when they're stopping by and the cars don't move, they get a ticket. If we install a camera on those sanitation trucks, I promise you those cars are going to move and it's going to make it easier. However, we are being stalled in Albany when it comes to that. More broadly speaking, I have legislation that's going to be passing in the next month that's going to require the trash containerization of all residences citywide. In West Harlem, we have a rat pilot program. Containerization program from 143rd to 153rd, from Broadway to Amsterdam, where we have on-street containers, and rat sightings have gone down by more than 60% on those blocks. Come April, that pilot is expanding to all of Community Board District 9. And so I'm excited to see the impact on rats, and we're taking the war to them directly. We also, in the council, passed universal curbside composting. And so now, if your building doesn't have a brown bin for your food scraps, make sure that you let our office know so that we can send DSNY to inspect and issue fines in real time. And so we're doing everything that we can. We know that when you compost, rats are attracted to food smells. So that's less food smells going to our landfill, meaning less rats are going to be going to those trash bags. So anyway, I know that there's a lot here. I get very passionate about this issue, but we're making a lot of strides, and my goal is to remain as the sanitation chair come next year. Neil will tell you, as my constituent, he calls my office every other day to get that litter basket restored on the corner, and I get it to him within 24 to 48 hours.
The reason why,
yes.
The reason why I decided to run for city council is because of this particular issue. I received a request from West 95th Street the other day that the street is not being cleaned, and they are going to raise money as a block association to hire an extra cleaner to clean the streets. That is lack of responsiveness from a council person.
They're going to do a fundraiser for me next week, by the way.
You're not being spoken to, please. All we hear is bureaucracy. I'm going to do this next time. I'm going to do this the other time. I don't want to criminalize, but I support a blanket criminalizing bill for e-bike. We are tired of this bureaucracy. That's why people want change. Number one, when it comes to street vendor, the sanitation department aired the licensing for street vendor. We have a backlog of 10,000 applications. The city council is not even addressing this to pass a bill to enable people who want to have a street vending business to be able to do so legally and pursue their dream. When I become the council person, I will bring those same experiences I have had of attending to constituent services by working with the block association, deploying ACE wherever possible, using from my discretionary funding so that neighbors do not have to elect a council person and donate from their pockets to clean on top of street cleaning. This is my commitment towards becoming a council person.
Thank you, Ms. Khan.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we had an opportunity to take two problems and make two solutions. And by that, I mean the new containers that we have, which cost $1,000 a piece and are manufactured abroad. This was a missed opportunity. Those containers could have been made by local, either city or state-based corporations, and instead we are spending this money outside. And again, as a small business owner that fought for contracts here, I know the frustration that local businesses experience when you're competing with other vendors outside of the state. The other issue was this composting problem. I'm an environmentalist at heart, and I've been composting for years before it became popular in the city. And now I'm seeing the brown bins was a great idea. The composting that the city had pre-pandemic was fantastic. But the problem is when you suddenly impose the composting on all of the buildings across the city and treat everyone equally, you're going to put the small mom and pop landlord or the small businesses, small buildings at risk because they're getting fines that they can't necessarily afford. And to hire someone who can go through compost and have compost is supposed to be something that's organic that can break down and be reused as soil. But when you're putting meat, for example, we had a presentation that was brought before us at Community Board 9 with one of the deputy commissioners from sanitation who said that you can actually place meat and other trash in compost. That is not compost. You cannot use that later on for plants. And then you have that also calls into question what sort of viruses or bacteria can grow in this sort of giant petri dish, for lack of a better description, when you have decomposing meat and poultry or fish. So that was another big mistake there.
Thank you. I think that we are coming close to the conclusion here, and I'd like to provide you an opportunity, the three of you, to sort of take 2 minutes and share the theme of your campaign with those who are tuned in and will watch this after this event concludes, and will be able to watch it, to sort of share your perspective in a big way, I guess. 2 minutes, please. Ms. Khan, why don't you start us off?
Sure. By theme of the campaign, I think one of the things that this campaign has brought for me was a sense of hope. For me and a lot of the folks fellow neighbors, other local businesses, other homeowners who have been placed in programs like the AEP or the TPT program unfairly, because we have been, for the past 4 years, contacting our council member with all sorts of concerns, from fire evictions to this issue with the AEP, for instance, and not receiving a response, being told that you have to send an email. But when you have an 85-year-old senior citizen who doesn't even text, email is not really an option, whose door is frequently closed. As I walk throughout Morningside, Hamilton Heights, and so on, I've felt very encouraged by neighbors who have said, not only am I going to contribute, but I'm also going to help you collect signatures for the ballots, because they see they see someone who for years has been fighting these fights without being an attorney. I fought, for instance, for the 12 families at my apartment building who were constantly receiving letters from their landlord's attorney about some excuse for why the rent should be raised. And I was able to successfully fight those cases for them through DHCR. And unfortunately, I moved out of that building, and that building is now entirely, it's no longer rent stabilized. That was something else I had reached out to the council member about and received no reply. The theme of the campaign is also one that continues way beyond this campaign. It started long before, and it'll continue way beyond the campaign in the form of finding after-school programs for our kids. We used to have free after school, and that is one of the other reforms that I would like to see as your council member. And you can visit my website to read more at tiffanyfornyc7.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Okporo?
Thank you very much, all of you. I am very excited to be here. I was introduced to Steve by West 95th Block Association President Stephen Van, and they are hosting a fundraiser for me in the last week of March. The block told me that they felt abandoned since they were redistricted. I have gone to Bloomingday Aging in Place and spoke to seniors who said it felt like they were being abandoned when they were fighting for their health care. I have spoken to young families who needed childcare, who said it felt like our council person abandoned them. How will their child go to school in a childcare desert? Traveling more than 30 minutes for a working family is almost unattainable. Our candidacy is historic. We are fighting against a political machine, and people are still willing to give to our campaign because they believe in change and cleaning off City Hall by bringing in new, fresh faces. New York is one of the most important cities in the country. When we elect bold progressive voices in New York City, we're sending a message and an example to the world that we're not going to stand to be a place whereby we'll be taken advantage of. This is what excites me. When young people sign up to my campaign and they say, my mom met you at the Henry Street Forum. I'm a gay person. I'm a child or a daughter of immigrants. And I feel like you are protecting the values that concerns me in New York City, a sanctuary city, a place of safety, a place of belonging. I remember when I came to New York City seeking refuge and opportunity, I never knew that my life would become what it is today. But New York had policies that enabled me to build a life for myself. And those are the policies I want to fight for, to ensure that nobody who comes to this city and stays on the streets remains on the streets. Ensure the streets are cleaner, safer, and our subway is accessible. This is the change we're trying to bring to District 7. Hopefully, June 24th, 2025, we'll have that difference in District 7. Edafe for City Council. Thank you all.
Thank you. Council member, you'll have the last word.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. I am very grateful to be here. This job has been one of the toughest and most rewarding things I've done in my whole life. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not even close to being finished. Please continue to reach out to my office with your ideas and questions. We're all in this together. On crime, on trash, on housing. There's a lot we can do if we commit to fighting for it. My door is literally never closed. Every year we serve thousands of constituents directly in our office and through home visits. I have been endorsed by every elected official that represents this area. And that's because I've been a good partner in government. I've been endorsed by the organizations that fight for working families because they know I have a track record delivering for them. And I actually understand how our laws and processes work. I'm going to keep the work up for all of you. And with that, I'll say good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, candidates. Thank you, neighbors. UpperWestSideCoalition.org. Check us out if you are interested in getting together as a block association, making it stronger, finding out a little bit more about what's going on, and Take care. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Night.
Really appreciate it.
Good night.